I've just realised the time is actually now 7:15. So welcome to our first committee meeting of 2026, and welcome to members, officers, members of the public here, and also anybody watching on our YouTube channel. So the first item on our agenda is apologies for absence. I have apologies from Councillor Spray, who's being substituted by Councillor Prime, and also apologies from Councillor Abbott. Otherwise, we are all here. Item 2 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Oh, sorry. Yes, you're quite right. Councillor Schweer's presumably on his way, I suspect. Okay.
Because there's a car that's ground to a halt in the middle of the car park, and
Right.
it looks like Peter.
Okay.
Do we need to rescue him?
Well, I think it was literally just out there.
Would you like to catch what happens when you've got
Yeah.
No, I think we'll keep going, and then if I'll just ask him if he comes in late to have if he's got any declarations of interest. So, does any member wish to declare the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interest or other registrable interests relating to items on the agenda, having regard to the code of conduct for members? Also, just make a joint declaration on behalf of us all in respect of Councillor Bohr, who is the agent, I think, for our first application this evening. Was that what Councillor Ritchie was going to mention? And Councillor Bowes-Flint, do you have a declaration as well? Yeah. I just would also like to make a declaration in respect of the same item, as the applicant is known to me. I haven't actually spoken to her about this at all, and I will remain and vote. So that is a non-registrable interest. Okay, so that will take us on to item 3, which is minutes of previous meetings. The minutes of the meetings on the 18th of November and the 9th of December are not ready yet, so we'll hold those over to our next meeting. I'll move on to item 4 on the agenda, public question time. We don't have any registered speakers under this item, so we will now move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is our planning applications. And the first application this evening is application number 25/01097 full. It is 85 East Street, Braintree, starting on page 6 of your agenda. We don't have any speakers on this application, so I will move straight on to ask, I think it's Dan that you're going to be giving the presentation on this one. Right, lovely. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. This application is 25/01097/full. It's for the proposed change of use from an indoor sport and recreation Class E to Church Hall Class F. Oh, that's a good start. Why is that not letting me change? Is that not letting me tap there? Oh, I'll have to do a click, apologies. The site is located within the Braintree development boundary, and it's outside of any conservation area and is not within the vicinity of any listed buildings. Here is the block plan illustrating the extent of the building and labels of the previous use of the unit as a gym. This proposal will retain the existing floor plan, with the only material change being the use of the building as a church hall. As you can see, an area of off-street parking would be retained to serve the building and its proposed use, with additional parking available via the access route to the north of the building. Residential dwellings are located to the north of the site, therefore mitigation has been provided and conditioned in relation to soundproofing the building to protect residents' amenity. Here is an aerial image of the site which shows the existing arrangement of the building in relation to its surrounding context. The attached section of the building to the north of this image has previously been converted to a church use, with this application simply extending this space. Here is the existing ground floor and first floor plan, which will be unchanged internally, other than the addition of the internal soundproofing as previously mentioned. Here is the existing roof plan, which will remain unchanged also, and also the front elevation will also remain, and side elevations will remain unchanged. Here are some site photos showing the site and its wider context as existing. Here's the parking area to the rear of the existing unit, which, as I mentioned, is already within a church use. Here's the side access leading to the front of the site, and that's parking area again. So in summary, the proposed change of use would enable the occupation of a currently vacant unit. The use would be consistent with the previously approved unit attached. Additional sound insulation and a noise management plan would be secured via condition to protect the amenities of neighbouring dwellings, and the site features ample off-street parking to support the proposed use. No external changes to the building are proposed, and no concerns have been raised by statutory consultees. It is recommended that planning permission is therefore granted in accordance with the approved plans and documents and subject to the conditions and reasons and informatives outlined within the Appendix 1 of the published committee report. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Almost like a script, this one. So this is only here by virtue of the fact that one of the agents is a member of Braintree District Council. Had it not been for him, then this would have been agreed under delegated authority by officers. Just a few comments to make, which is obviously there is no external alterations to the building. All alterations will be done internally and covered by building regulations. And it already has a use as a church building there, simply extending the use of that building to accommodate additional worshippers, etc. So therefore, I would have no problem in siding with officers' recommendations this evening to approve this application, subject to any other comments. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Schwier, just before we, you're so,
I have no declarations, Madam Chairman. If I have, I'd say.
Okay, thank you very much. That's what I was trying to ask. I think Councillor Bowes-Flint first, and then.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Everything that Councillor Ritchie obviously has said, I endorse. However, I am pleased to see that there is a sound insulation and noise management plan, purely and simply because, and I think it may be this church, used to hire a room at the museum now and the town hall, and I've chaired meetings at the town hall when they were in there. To me, because I love music, the sound is absolutely beautiful, but it is loud and proud, and those houses are quite close to there, so they may be affected. So I'm quite pleased to see that that's been put in there, Dan, and it's no detriment to the people singing because it is good. But if you don't like anything like that and you don't like music, then I would imagine it is annoying. That's all. Thank you.
Councillor Finken.
Yes, I'm a bit concerned really about the outward appearance of the building, which it still looks like an industrial unit. And I would have thought that a change of use might provide the opportunity to have something a little bit more aesthetically attractive. And that probably the sponsors of the change would want something eventually which was more inviting, really, for their church hall use. So I'm not very happy just letting it go through as it stands without suggesting that there could be some improvements to, particularly the entrances to the building, to make it more appropriate for a church hall. Thank you very much.
Yes, Dan, could you come back on that?
Yes, no problem at all. Thank you for your question. In terms of obviously the external appearances, the reasoning behind that is to try and limit the impacts as much as possible. It's not uncommon for changes of use to not feature any changes to the external appearance. The other thing that's worth noting is this site is obviously within an industrial estate, and we would be minded to retain that potential use in the future should the occupants leave, and obviously the setup is quite conducive to some type of industrial use in the future. So I think they've kind of hedged their bets in that respect in terms of the potential for it to be changed in the future. And obviously we as the local authority aren't able to request changes to the external appearance of the building beyond what's applied for essentially. So yeah, that's kind of where we are.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Anybody else got any other comments they want to make on this application? In which case, would anybody like to move the officer's recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Bowes-Flint. And a seconder, Councillor Ritchie. All those in favour of granting this application? Thank you. Those against? And abstentions? One abstention. Thank you, members. So we'll now move on to the next item on our agenda is item 5B. This is application number 25/014874. This is at Towlands, Panfield Road, Braintree. And I think we have a speaker on. Yes, Mr. Smith is going to speak on this application.
Thank you, Chair, and on behalf of the applicant, thank you for the opportunity to address the committee this evening. The applicant would like to thank our case officer and the statutory consultees for their help in the preparation of a scheme that has a recommendation for approval. The application before you seeks planning permission for 5 additional houses at Towerlands Park, delivering 2 plots as affordable housing and 3 plots for sale, in addition to the 575 that are already secured by the Outline Planning Permission and the extra 12 at the Neighbourhood Centre, making good use of the land which is already allocated for residential development in the local plan. The scheme has been designed in accordance with the site-wide design code attached to the Outline Planning Permission and to match the appearance of the streets in the Barnes River Ledge and Parkland Edge South character areas, continuing the perimeter block form and facing outwards to address the public realm. The scheme follows the parameter plans and all relevant development management standards are met, with no objections to the scheme from the statutory consultees. In addition, the new homes will take advantage of the services and facilities that are being delivered at Towerlands Park, and the applicant is committed to a set of financial contributions to mitigate the impact of the extra plots, which includes funding for off-site highway works, early years primary and secondary education, healthcare infrastructure and sports facilities. To conclude, the scheme will continue the redevelopment of the wider site in accordance with the approved design code and ensures that the 4th and final phase can be delivered in full pursuant to the Outline Planning Permission. As such, I trust you will concur with the case officer's recommendation and approve this application for planning permission to add another 5 homes to Towerlands Park.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We'll now move on to officer's presentation, which is going to be given by Mel.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. I'll move that a bit closer. Sorry, Dan. Good evening, members. So, as set out by the Speaker, this application is for 5 additional dwellings within the approved scheme at Phase 3 at Towerlands Park. This first slide shows you the 3 parcels of land that sit adjacent to Phase 4 of the Townland site, and you can see them in relation to the remainder of Phase 3, which was approved last year sometime. So at the bottom here, this is where the terrace of 3 properties are, and then we've got 2 smaller parcels which are for the 2 detached properties. Again, this plan puts the those 3 site areas in context with the wider layout of Phase 3. The next slides show you elevations and floor plans for the proposed properties. So this is the terrace of 3 properties and their floor plans. And then we have the Frogmore, which is a detached property, and their floor plans. And then the Gosford with their floor plans. And then we've got some photographs of the site. So Phase 3 is only just started, and these photographs kind of go look across the site to where the Gosford and the Frogmore dwellings would be located. And then these second set of photographs show where the terrace of 3 properties would be located. So the key considerations for the application is that the principle of developing the site for residential purposes was established by the outlines at the outline stage. There's been no objections from statutory technical consultees. The appearance, siting, landscaping, layout and scale are considered acceptable, and that the scheme represents is well designed and delivers 5 additional dwellings. I don't plan on reading these all out. They are set out within the committee report, but these are the heads of terms that are proposed for the Section 106. And therefore it's recommended that planning permission is granted subject to the completion of the Section 106 and the conditions and reasons and informative set out within the published committee report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mel. The members, Councillor Bowes-Flint.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This covers my county division, and to be perfectly honest with you, that road, this site, just gives me palpitations. Anything mentioned about that site and building and roads is just, yeah, something different about my life. But will the road be built when the houses are built?
So, thank you for the question, Councillor Basflint. So perhaps could I just clarify in terms of the road that you're referring to? You're referring to road and infrastructure on this particular site or on the adjacent site? In relation to this? So
I'm just thinking of the developer, the name, same problem.
So the estate roads on Towlands have been substantially completed. So this effectively is, perhaps if I could ask Mel, if you could just put the plan back up to show the three parcels. So these are obviously spread over an established phase. So the road infrastructure is there on the actual site itself.
Just more traffic on Penfield Lane.
So obviously you're talking about 5 additional dwellings in terms of a net increase. Obviously, as set out in the committee report, the County Highway Department have been consulted, and who are the statutory consultee when it comes to highway safety and capacity, and have raised no objections in relation to this. But obviously, yeah, the implication is there would be additional traffic, but yeah, there's no objections before us this evening in terms of that, the additionality that's being applied for with this separate application.
I can understand that. The trouble is, Madam Chairman, the county don't see the complaints that I get from all the residents who live in Panfield Lane, who constantly are getting their cars hit. In fact, 2 or 3 of them now can't get their cars insured because they've been hit that many times, because people go past them and it's too tight because there's cars parked on there all of the time, and they're going more than the speed limit, and they're getting their wing mirrors knocked off and everything. And I just get constant complaints from the people of Panfield Lane. County Highways should be aware, because I constantly complain to them that something needs to be done, but they don't match that up with planning applications like this, which are putting more traffic onto Panfield Lane. But I just need to stick up for my residents, that's all, and I'm doing that, so thank you.
Just a further point, Councillor Basflint, so just to add, I think in terms of the wider issue, and obviously this goes beyond the scope of this application, but I mean the point you make is very valid, obviously, in terms of the wider impact, and as an officer team, we're obviously fully aware of the pressure and the issue, and that as a particular local issue, and it's obviously not a recent issue that's occurred. This has been going on for some time. So all I can say, just for information, essentially, is that officers, colleagues are working very hard with the relevant developer teams to try to bring that to a resolution, and there will hopefully be further updates in that regard shortly. But in relation to this application, obviously members need to consider this purely on the basis upon which it's submitted, which I appreciate you reference, but just for clarity. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Diamond.
It's mostly been answered by Christopher, but I was going to suggest, I know this is probably beyond the remit of this committee, but with the issues down Panfield Lane, when we build more, is there an argument to say we should have more traffic calming measures down Panfield Lane? But then I think you've mostly answered that for me anyway after I put my hand up. Thank you.
Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I absolutely agree with what previous councillors have said around some of the traffic issues within that location. As a committee, we can just look forward to hopefully a resolution to the spine road that links Springwood Industrial Estate through to the end of Panfield Lane, and that will offer at least some respite and some alleviation to the traffic that's continually pumped onto Panfield Lane. With regards to the application that's before us this evening, as the officer has quite rightly pointed out, there's already an extent planning permission for this development, and this is just purely some additional use of some land that's been identified to install or to deliver a few more units, some of those of which are going to be affordable houses as well. So in the context of what's before us this evening, I don't see any reason to go against officers' recommendations that are before us this evening. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Beavis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I wouldn't disagree with the comments made by Councillor Bowers-Flint, but you know we can sort of say that about many sites all around our district actually, that you know community infrastructure, highways, services, and in fact we had a motion in this chamber not so long ago, so I really do get that. That said, I had cause to go to the site during the Christmas period. And I was actually quite pleasantly surprised, actually, by how well the site has come on. I mean, I know the site from a young girl in my riding days down there quite well. And I really was quite pleased with what I was seeing, actually. I would be happy to support tonight's additional houses going on as well. And I also think that in terms of the applicant, I think the forums have really helped us because we've actually unpicked a lot of what's been going on this site actually, so we've sort of had a fair opportunity to have our say. So no, I would be more than happy to support this. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Shreer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just to seek reassurance from the officers with regards to the biodiversity and net gain, because I noticed the comments that are made in that application, that they will be considered off-site as well as on-site if they're not going to meet the percentage as agreed. And the other thing is that obviously just to check about the bins and the new adopted standards going forward, that these properties will hopefully comply with all of that and any future needs. Thank you.
Yes, so with all the applications coming forward from when the initial schemes were put forward in terms of the new recycling regime, these properties are no different in terms of they will be able to accommodate the extra bins and facilities that are required. In terms of the B&G question, I just need to double check what conditions that we've imposed, so I'll come back to you on that one. That's okay.
Anybody else wish to? Councillor Holland.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I should say that from the outset that I support the officer's recommendation on this, but I just wanted to check with respect to the heads of terms and the Section 106 agreement. The slide just says that it's a financial contribution towards. Have we already established what level those contributions will be, or is that something that would be agreed subsequent to any consent granted on this?
I can answer that one. No, those figures. If you look through the section, where is it? Section 12 within the committee report, under the bold text, where there is a financial contribution that's been requested, the actual figure is reproduced in that section. And so they are the figures that have been pulled through into the legal agreement that's currently being discussed at the moment.
Thanks. The reason for pointing that out is that that won't have gone out online with this YouTube broadcast, whereas this slide will. So I just feel it gives people comfort that we're making a decision in full knowledge of.
Councillor Schweerd, so just to clarify the point on B&G, so the standard condition, which is always imposed as comes across as an informative on the decision notice. If I just get the page number for you, it's page 50 of the agenda pack. So it confirms the B&G requirement there for the application, and I think there was also a condition for a further ecology-related condition earlier on. Which, if you bear with me, I'll just scroll back to find. I'm sure I saw another one. Oh yeah, apologies. It's at the bottom of page 47, which is biodiversity enhancement layout. So there's some further, an additional point there that we've also, but in terms of the statutory B&G, it would be subject to that.
Okay, anybody else wish to make any further comment? In which case, could I have somebody to move officer's recommendation? Councillor Beavis. And a seconder, Councillor Ritchie. All those in favour of granting this application It is unanimous. Thank you very much, members. So we'll now move on to our third application this evening. This is application number 25. Application number 25/02205, full land to the rear of Bors Tie residential home, Bors Tie Road, Silver End. And we do have a speaker on this application who's Mr. Nixon, the architects. Thank you, Mr. Nixon. If you'd like to come forward, press the button on the microphone.
Thank you, Chair. So there are a lot of, I suppose, recommendations for refusal on the scheme, so I just want to give my point to try and add some weight, and hopefully you guys can reconsider this recommendation. The site contains a current consent for 1 3-bedroom dwelling with a double garage. Proposals are for 3 1-bedroom dwellings to provide affordable market homes to the village of Silver End. Each property meets the minimum space standards for a 1-bedroom property that include external amenity space of 70 metres squared. Guidance typically requires 50 metres squared. They have a lower ridge height than approved. The street scene matches that of Silver End, which officers are satisfied as acceptable. The question is whether the site can accommodate 3 units. The entire site represented by the blue line equates to 1800 metres squared approx. Within this, the red line, which is now subject to BNG, totals 940. Owners will benefit from all, however this application is determined within the red line, and we must reiterate that we meet nationally described space standards for 1-bedroom units. We also need to be mindful that the access is currently used by the Bors Tie care home. Moving forward, this will no longer be permitted as the land is within our client's ownership, reducing traffic to and from the care home limited to the highway access only. The fallback scheme will use this same access. It has approval for heavy vehicle turning, which includes fire trucks and bin lorries. It would seem heritage and ecological reports have been undertaken as desktop studies. They are heavily weighted towards protection of trees. I attach an image of the current site which has been cleared in preparation for the current scheme. You will see there are no trees within the boundary in proximity of proposals. Hopefully you have all got this. The impact on proposals on heritage assets are subjective. Our heritage impact assessment considers proposals neutral. The proposed scheme will occasion a degree of change to the site itself but will not unacceptably intrude on the setting of the adjacent heritage assets and the conservation area. In the National Planning Policy Framework, paragraph 215, it states where a development proposal will lead to less than substantial harm to the significance of a designated heritage asset, this harm should be weighed against the public benefits of proposals, including where appropriate, securing its optimal viable use. I think we are missing an opportunity to provide affordable residential accommodation for the local benefit next to an existing care home, achieved without detriment or harm to the historic assets and setting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nixon. So members, we'll now move on to officer presentation. I'd like to introduce you to Brittany. It's her first presentation too. Thank you, Brittany.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. This application relates to the erection of 3 detached 1-bedroom bungalows and associated landscaping on a parcel of land to the rear of Bors Tie residential home in Silver End. It's important to provide some planning context for this site. So previously, planning permission has been granted for 1 detached bungalow and a garage early last year. This application hasn't yet been implemented and no conditions have yet to be discharged. Here's the location plan, which shows that access would be obtained by an existing access off of Bors Tie Road. A satellite image taken from 2018 provides a little bit of a better site context. It's my screen. 1 second. Apologies. I think my camera's on. There we go. Is that better?
It's nice seeing you.
1 second, let me just share my screen again. So this is satellite imagery taken of the site in June 2018. So for some context, you can see the modern movement houses along Silver Street to the south of the site. We've got Silver End allotment gardens which wrap around the site, and then Borstie Residential Home just up here. This was taken in June 2018, and as you can see, the site is quite heavily covered in a lot of vegetation and trees. This is a satellite image taken in October 2025, so it's very recently, which shows that the site has now been completely cleared of all vegetation. It is understood the site has been cleared in anticipation for development, but we'll talk about that a bit later. This is a photograph of the access taken from Borstie Road towards the site. We've got the modern movement houses again just here, and then Borstie Farm just here. That's been converted into a residential dwelling house. We've got, looking towards Borstie Road here within the site, again modern movement houses which just beyond the picture there, and then Borstie Barn just there. Again, this is looking down towards Borstie Garage, and then the opposite direction towards the centre of the village. Here's a better picture of the site. As you can see, again, it's been cleared completely. There's some trees to the rear. That's beyond the site itself, and I believe they are located within the allotment gardens, which are BDC owned. Again, looking here, more of the site, that's looking towards the Scout Hut. And then the opposite direction, which is looking towards those modern movement houses along Silver Street. I think it's important to discuss the relationship with the adjacent listed buildings. So the site itself is located adjacent to Borstie Farm. Whilst Borstie Farm is no longer sort of a working agricultural farm, it does play an important part in Silver End's history. It predates the village. And there are several listed buildings located within the former farm. We've got Borstie Barn here, which, as I said, is residential. The granary at Borstie Farmhouse, and then the residential home, and then again those modern movement houses along Silver Street. As discussed earlier, the site already benefits from a planning permission for the erection of one single detached bungalow with a detached garage as well. And here's the proposed site plan for this particular scheme. So we've got a linear arrangement of detached bungalows sort of located within a staggered arrangement. You might notice that the red line sort of encompassed the entire site on the previous approval, whilst we've got a much smaller red line here with the blue line, which is understood to also be in the applicant's ownership surrounding the site. First floor plan with the bedroom to the rear and a small study to the front. Proposed elevations. Now these elevations are not too dissimilar to what was previously approved. And it's quite evident that a design consideration was taken from a set of 3 bungalows located along Silver Street, which have a very similar appearance, hip-roofed, rendered elevations, and a red brick plinth. Proposed roof plan there. So in summary, the application seeks planning permission for the erection of 3 detached one-bedroom bungalows. The site is located within the Silver End development boundary, wherein the principle of residential development is acceptable. As discussed, the site is located within the Silver End Conservation Area, and is in close proximity to several Grade 2 listed buildings. So there's several concerns that have been identified in relation to this site. Firstly, the proposal is considered to have a detrimental impact on the character and appearance of the surrounding area by virtue of sort of the cramped and contrived nature of the layout. There is a failure to provide high quality level of amenity to future occupiers, and this particularly relates to plot number 3. So whilst I understand that if the blue line was to be included within the calculation of residential amenity, that it would exceed Essex Design Guide standards, we must consider what is within that red line. And unfortunately with plot number 3, it does fall short of the 50 square metres required by the Essex Design Guide, and there are some concerns regarding its shape and its shallow nature. Less than substantial harm has also been identified to both the Silver End Conservation Area and the surrounding Grade 2 listed buildings associated with Borstie Farm. There's also insufficient information provided regarding highway safety, ecology and refuse collection. I think it's important to note that whilst we were happy with the highway impact for one single dwelling, we must take into consideration that we are increasing the density of the site to 3. With that includes more vehicular movement in and out the site, and with this particular application we did not receive any visibility displays or any highway information, so Essex Highways were not satisfied that enough information was provided for them to be satisfied that it wouldn't be an unacceptable impact on highway safety. Again, ecology, insufficient information, in particular the accreditations of the person who conducted the ecology survey, and then insufficient information regarding refuge collection, particularly given the length of the access to the adopted highway. And then lastly, there are some disparities within the arboricultural impact assessment, which does prevent us from having a clear understanding of those arboricultural impacts on the trees surrounding the site and within kind of the site boundary. While some of these trees are not located directly within the site, they are on the periphery of it. To conclude, officers recommend that planning permission is refused for the reasons outlined within Appendix 1 of the committee report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Brittany. Members, over to you. Councillor Beavis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and first of all, thank you, Brittany, on your first-class presentation. That was really helpful and confident and informative, and thank you for that. And yeah, I have to be honest, I broadly agree with everything that you've said. I know Silver End fairly well. In fact, we were there just before Christmas, actually. And it is such a beautiful conservation village. And I think we do need to protect those properties, actually, those foundation properties. And I just think it's overdevelopment. I think it just looks crammed, as you've said. And it looks before, on the previous application, as if there was more sympathetic tree planting, and that doesn't look like that's the case now. So I'm really keen to hear what other members say, but I do broadly agree with your report. Thank you very much.
Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and likewise, thank you, Brittany, for the presentation. Really first class. Thank you very much. I think this is an example whereby we have granted permission for a house right-sized for that property, and then the developers thought, what can we do next, and put something in whereby I think it's kind of overtaken what has already been established. Of course, if we were to refuse this evening, the applicant has got the right of appeal to see whether an inspector would think otherwise. But before us this evening, we have 7 pretty clear reasons why officers have sought to recommend this for refusal this evening. Quite often we berate Essex County Highways for not putting in an objection to other developments, yet quite clearly here they have some concerns. I think what highlights the biggest concern for me is that from one development where you may have 2 cars at a single bungalow property, you've now got up to 6 cars, although there's only 3 car parking spaces there. As we all know, there's not many households that just rely on a single car household to navigate, especially in a village location. So where are those 3 cars going to park? I would probably hazard a guess at the entrance to that slim lane that was shown to us on the presentation, or out on the main road. So I can quite easily see why Highways have sought to object on this occasion here. And as quite rightly pointed out, we have to take into context the red line of the boundary in the application this evening, and it gives one of those units a less than desirable spatial outlook, as contrary to the Essex design guide. Just one question, if I may, Brittany, or even to the chairman. What was the reason why this actually came to committee? Because I've got the reason here as a request by the chairman and deputy chairman.
Yes, because it's applications for between 3 and 9 dwellings are referred to myself and the vice chair to decide whether or not we would like it to come to committee. It was also requested as a call-in by the member for Silver End.
Fine, perfect. In which case, and for those, for the reasons that have been set out by the officer in the presentation, I think we have 7 good reasons to refuse this, and we shouldn't be pushing too hard against officers' recommendations on this occasion. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Schwer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think Councillor Ritchie has put forward all the valid points potentially for officers' recommendation for refusal, so I won't repeat them because I was going to make similar points.
Councillor Flint.
Thank you. First of all, can I congratulate you, Brittany, on an excellent first presentation. If you mean to carry on like that, outstanding. And that's coming from me. And officers along there will tell you that that doesn't happen very often. So well done. Just on the your reasoning, which I find a little bit harsh, that you called it in with the vice chairman. If the member also called it in, that should be on the agenda, along with the reasons stated why he called it in. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Bowes-Flint. So just checking the agenda, so we've referred to the fact that it's been referred to committee at the request of the Chair, Vice Chair, but I appreciate that the further explanation in terms of what preceded that is not included. So we'll take that back, and that's something we'll make sure we pick up in future. But hopefully the clarification is...
Yeah, just to confirm, I haven't got a problem, but I think in this instance, this didn't need to be here, basically. Thank you.
I would just say, because it's actually not really for debate in this forum, but the fact that one of the member wanted to, local member wanted to have it considered by the committee was a factor in our decision making, and I would have expected him to be here, but unfortunately he's given his apologies, unable to be here tonight. So anybody else wish to make a comment? I mean, could I just say one very, very minor thing? I think it's not refuge, but refuse. Could you just correct that in the reasons? Thank you. Councillor Beavers.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and for all the reasons set out by committee members this evening, I would go with officers' recommendations on this application. Thank you.
Councillor Ritchie, are you going to move? Councillor Beavers, are you moving that? And Councillor Ritchie secondly. So all those in favour of officers' recommendation, and that is unanimous. Thank you, members. Right, so the next application is item 5D on your agenda. This is application number 25/02356, full 6 Crittall Drive, Braintree. And the presentation is going to be given. We don't have any speakers, but Anne Chris is going to give us our presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So this item, similar to the first one, is just seeking a pure change of use. So in this case, from B8 storage and distribution to a combined dual use of B2 industrial and B8 storage and distribution. The site is located along Crittall Drive in Braintree, which is on the Springwood Drive industrial estate. Although it is for a pure change of use, apologies, I seem to be having the same, there we go. Although it's for a pure change of use, same as the first item this evening, I'll just take you through the plan. So we'll start off with the existing red line site location plan. So you can see it's at the end of Crittall Drive, and you can see it's quite a substantial existing unit on the footprint of the site. The existing site plan. So again, you can see the roof form of the building, access to the front, and parking is provided at the side. We've got some photos in a second, which will also show that. The proposed site plan, so again, no difference. And in terms of the ground floor plan, just for completeness, so we have the existing and proposed. Existing elevations, again, no proposed changes to the external appearance of the building. Floor plans, and again, just for completeness, the elevations. So a couple of photos. So this shows the east flank facing flank wall of the application building with car parking. The north-facing front elevation, that gives you an impression of what the existing building looks like, and then the view from the west. So in this particular case, as I said, the application seeks a pure change of use from B8 to a mix of B8 and B2. The site is located within a designated employment policy area, and therefore this use is policy compliant with the council's adopted local plan. We've got no alterations proposed to the building, so the principal concern here is the actual use itself. We have no objections from statutory consultees. There is a point in terms of the hours proposed for the use of the building. Because of the changing nature of the use, it's proposed to change for 24/7 use. However, given the distance away from any nearby residential properties, the lack of any objection or concerns from the council's environmental health team, and the fact that it's on a designated employment site, that is considered to be acceptable. The parking provision, obviously, Springwood Drive is of its time, and there are existing problems, as touched on other items in the local area. So if you were to apply current parking standards to this proposal, it would be deficient in terms of overall parking provision. However, it's an existing industrial building, employment building on a designated site, and it's not considered that the change of use is unreasonable to the point where we would recommend refusal of the application. To try to mitigate some of that impact, a condition is recommended in relation to cycle parking to help try and promote some sustainable forms of travel. But on that basis, the application is recommended for approval this evening in accordance with the conditions set out within the published committee report. I'm happy to answer any questions, Madam Chairman.
Councillor Bowers.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. It just seems like another one that shouldn't be before us tonight. Can I just ask how this gets classed as a major planning application?
Thank you, Councillor Bowers, for the question. So it's based on floor space of the building in terms of change of use. So under the scheme of delegation, major applications are caught under Part A of the scheme of delegation. And because this is over a certain size, this application has been caught.
Is that normal sort of elsewhere, or is that something that we need to review our scheme of delegation? Because it just seems crazy now we're getting things like this in front of us. Seems like a waste of our time.
So obviously the scheme of delegation potentially can be reviewed and for further discussion, but under the current scheme, obviously it's caught just by reason of the floor space. The majority of applications, obviously, which this committee considers are of a major nature, which obviously before we previously revised the scheme of delegation previously was not the case. We had a lot of very small scale householder applications and things like that, which were coming for fairly regularly. But yeah, this is one where unusually it's purely in relation to change of use, and obviously it's relatively straightforward in the sense there's no objections, comments or consultee inputs.
Just to come back on that, is floor space a generalisation that is used across the country?
Yep. Yeah, so apologies. So for major application is a defined term in terms of number of units, so in the context of residential, or in terms of commercial if it's over a certain threshold in terms of floor space. So it's actually defined, and as a local planning authority, we use the term quite frequently in terms of major, minors or other applications. So these are all defined application types, and it just happens that major is that particular category at the top in terms of floor space or residential unit numbers.
Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just to follow on from that before I make some points, is there an opportunity to revise that under the current local plan refresh or not? No.
So my understanding would be we'd have to follow a similar process to what we've done previously, which is essentially because it's included within the council's constitution, so it's something that would have to be considered as part of that, and it would be a decision for council. Is my understanding.
I can see the sense in it. When there's so many ticks in all the right boxes, it just seems a bit odd as to why we would go against your better judgment. So the points that I was going to make is obviously Appendix 3 shows that this site has gone through a number of changes over the years, most of which have been acceptable, and I don't see any reason why we should be moving anything other than our officer's recommendations to make this change to this site. It's in an area that's quite nicely tucked away from the main road, so as you quite rightly point out, there would be no issues with the 24/7 use that would be associated with that, although I don't suppose it would be used 24/7 all the time. But the flexibility is there, and it also means that we get to have some, or get to maintain the economical benefits of having a business here in the Braintree district. So I am more than happy to work alongside officers' recommendations to approve this application this evening. Thank you.
Can I just ask, Chris, in relation to the use classes, am I right in thinking that the use classes did change fairly recently? The government changed the use classes to make them more encompass wider uses. Is that right?
So there's been various changes to the use class order over the years. There, in terms of employment, that was some time ago. I couldn't, off the top of my head, give you the exact date, but essentially what we're talking about here is a proposal which we're seeing actually more commonly across other sort of employment locations. Obviously, we've had it on sites such as Horizon 120, where end users are trying to seek flexibility over the use to give them the ability to rent and market the unit out. So this is not uncommon from what we're seeing in terms of which seems to be a demand that's being driven by the market effectively.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bevis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I was just going to second the recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. So that was moved by Councillor Ritchie, wasn't it? Yes, seconded by Councillor Bevis. All those in favour of officer's recommendation? Okay, that again is granted unanimously. Thank you, members. So that now brings us on to the final application this evening. This is a tree preservation order application. It's item 6A on the agenda, application number 25/02387 TPO, open space at Starman's Wood, Braintree. And Chris is going to, no speakers, so Chris is going to move it straight on to the presentation by Chris.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So for avoidance of doubt, the application's been reported to committee as the trees are owned by the council, so and subject to a tree preservation order. So I won't read out in full the description of the works, but essentially several elements of this particular proposal that affects a number of specific assets. The site is located at Stallman's Wood, which I think technically falls within the ward of Cressing, but is directly adjacent to obviously Braintree. In terms of the site context, members will be very familiar with the site. So we have Stallman's Wood here in terms of the road. The area of the open space is indicated here by the red line. And then a slightly wider context will give you a bit more context. So you can see just off of that previous plan, you have Gaddy's Corner here. And you can see the tree assets on the aerial photograph. So this is the site plan, which shows the location of the trees and the assets in slightly more detail. In terms of the works, this is the exception for the existing trees. So all of the other trees are in general good health and condition. This particular specimen has been previously reduced, is currently dead and therefore proposed to be removed. With the exception of this, the other works essentially involve works of the tree. So this would involve a crown reduction, so a reduction of the spread of the tree, if you like, given the proximity of the road. Then we have the mixed hedge, which is proposed for a reduction of height by 2 metres. And again, a reduction of the canopy for this particular one, but also doing some other works in terms of removing ivy from the specimen and removing it off the fence line. There were no comments received from the parish council, and we haven't received any representations on the application, but as I said, the application's been reported for probity reasons. In terms of the assessment, as I said, the trees, other than the dead specimen, are all in good health. The works are considered to be in line with good arboricultural practices and is a demonstration of the council undertaking its duty of care to ensure that its assets are properly maintained. It should be noted that the application followed an earlier resident inquiry raising some concerns in relation to the proximity of the various assets to the properties along Devon Court. So the application has been made on the back of reviewing that correspondence. But given that the works are considered to be minor, in line with good arboricultural practices, the application is recommended for consent here this evening in accordance with the conditions as set out within the report. But I'll be happy to answer any questions again, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Bowes-Flint.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it's always been an oddity that the people in Starman's Wood, I can't believe that they don't actually complain more than what they do, because they're actually in Braintree, and they were in Braintree. They got moved into Cressy, and they're nowhere near Cressy, and they have to pay a parish rate, whereas the person in the next road don't pay one, so they've got every grand to moan. I haven't got a problem with any of this. The only problem I've got with, even in under the description, it took us 3 attempts to spell meters right, and we're talking about meters as in distance rather than meters as in gas and electric. So, and that carries on throughout the report. So, just I appreciate the person who wrote this report is not in the room, but yeah, if we can just check our spelling, thank you.
I just have a question myself, Chris. It's just the oak tree, the picture of... I noted on the report it's only to reduce the crown by 2 to 3 metres, but I was just wondering why it's felt necessary to cut that branch at all. What is the problem with it?
So I think if I just scoot back to the
That
plan, I think essentially my understanding is about just reducing the spread. So one, it is potentially the load on the actual tree itself, but also because of the overhang nature of the branch to the road itself.
Can I just ask, why does that matter? Because, I mean, I can understand if it's preventing a lorry from going under it, but, I mean, oak trees are spreading trees. So.
They are, but obviously the works and in terms of the maintenance of the tree needs to be undertaken given the context of the site. So obviously if this was in a more formal open space setting, for instance, the tree of this nature would have a greater scope potentially to establish. I mean, I obviously members will be aware I'm not an arboriculture officer myself. This is a member of the landscape team who's obviously inspected the tree, but those works have been deemed necessary to make sure that we're fulfilling our duty of care as the owner of the tree, and reducing potential risk and liability potentially for the tree as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bowes-Flint.
Just to help out there, Madam Chairman, that tree used to be in the garden of the one house that covered that whole site. So that tree was there before the road and the pathway was built. That is the problem. And there were a lot more trees there, and a lot were felled. So I imagine that is only the reason why that is there like that.
Councillor Prime.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question in relation to the hedges, and if we grant this tonight, when are we looking for these to be done? I'm just conscious of, in the next couple of months, nesting birds will start using these areas, or do we leave that then till the autumn time when they've all fledged away?
So thank you, Councillor Prime, for the question. Good question. So you're completely right. The works would need to be done outside of bird nesting season. I don't know. I mean, at the moment, the team are scheduling works pretty promptly after we're considering applications or reviewing inquiries. So I would imagine this will be undertaken relatively quickly, but I'm afraid I couldn't confirm absolutely. But based on other work that we're currently doing, I would expect this to be completed before the bird nesting season starts this year.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anybody else? Would anybody like to move the officer's recommendation in for these? Councillor Bowes-Flint and seconded Councillor Holland. All those in favour? Again, that's unanimous. Thank you, members. That brings us to the end of our meeting this evening.